I'm Mark from Mataró, and now I'm going to present you my work called The Evolution of Animation Techniques. Well, in the past decade, the animation has evolved to a point that we can say what is real and what is done by a computer. It's in this point that if we take a look back, we can see a timeline where we can see all the techniques that we needed to arrive to the nowadays point. Some people today trying to say that the most traditional part of these techniques today are obsolete, or they are going to be extinguished. But the reality, I think, that is very different. That is what I try to answer with that work. Well, the animation in the 2D animation, 2D animation techniques are the most classic and traditional animation style. And this type of animation consists in the creation of motion through the fast overlay of different images that presented small variations, one each to the other. It's with this principle that emerged the basis for all the animation techniques. Well, the hand-drawn animation is the first type of 2D animation that we are going to analyze. This is known as the most popular art of the 20th century and was based in hand drawing every frame by hand. From this technique appeared another technique known as self-drawing that consists in subdivide every plane in different depth space planes that facilitate the workflow when we want to animate the characters, or when we want to draw the next frame. Is with this technique that can seem very obsolete, that nowadays a lot of programs, the layer workflow can exist. Well, the cutout animation is a simple technique that takes as reference the cell-drawing animation workflow, but goes beyond. In this technique, the animator also cut every character part, and well, we can say that the animator implements a very primitive joint skeleton that permits to the animator makes the animation process more easily. As we can see in the video of Angel Anaconda, every part of his body is cut, every joint is cut to make possible the reading part. The rotoscopy is a technique basically from the post-production camp. This technique basically consists in tracing a real image, frame per frame, and applying all the movements that make the actor in the real image support to our digital or analogic support character. This technique can seem very obsolete, but the reality is very different, because a lot of success series or films have been of animation have been done with this technique. Some examples can be the film of Anastasia of Disney, or also the cartoon CD called Cowboy Bebop. Also in the 3D computer animation, this technique can be found in his analog called the motion capture. The flipbook animation is the animation technique that is more simple. This technique consists in pass very fast all the pages, all the drawn pages of a notebook, giving the sense of movement to the eye. This technique that can seem very domestic nowadays in the digital era still have a place, and some commercials have implemented that, like the commercial of Motorola. Okay. With the arrival of the digital age, the 2D computer animation arrived, and lots of traditional 2D people say that had to disappear. But the reality is different. These techniques were adapted into the new digital formats. Well, flash animation is the most popular technique in the final 19th and the principle of 2000 millennium, well, the 21 millennium. This type of animation simply consists in animations made with the Flash program, and the characteristic is that the program creates a file that fills a very poor part of a space in the computers, and is perfect to distribute them by the internet. In the example, you can see that the type of the look of the movement and the animation that gives the program to the audiovisual products is a very simple color style, and also the movement is all done by movement interpolations. Well, the rest of 2D computer animation, I'm not going to explain every one because all are the same that the traditional 2D computer animations, only changing the support. Well, the 3D computer animation comprehends the techniques, all the techniques that are like the big portion of the cake in the animation industry. In the lately 19th and the entry of 2000, of the 21 millennium, they experimented the popularity evolution. Is with this film, Toy Story 1, appeared in 1995, that the 3D animation became famous. Although the 3D animation began in 1976 with the launch of Futuro Pro, we practically can say that the animation was invented then, because until Toy Story, this technique wasn't practically developed. What caused Toy Story is that evolved the technique to a quality point that permit the 3D CGI animation techniques being incorporated successfully in the audiovisual market. Well, one of the things that are important of the entry of the 3D computer animation is that firstly permitted ourselves to introduce the stereoscopic 3D. Until the parents of this technique, the stereoscopic 3D only could be implemented in the stop motion animations, in the 3D stop motion animations. But nowadays we can implement also in the 3D animation techniques. Well, the motion capture is one of the most famous techniques used to read the 3D animation characters. The motion capture is based on photogrammetric techniques and mainly is used on the film industry for fantasy, science fiction, sport, and for some medical purposes. As you can see at the video, you can see that what does the technique is to take the movement of the model or the actor and incorporate that in the character final read that then can be edited. Well, the dynamics have a simple purpose: reproduce all the elements or that take part in the real world, like water, wind, fire, etc. It's correct. Sekarang, this type of this method of recreating elements in a computer is very famous, but also it is one of the most prohibitive techniques for the potent hardware that requires. Well, finally we have the stop motion techniques that simply consist in give movement to real world objects, taking photos of every object frame by frame and cycling moving them every frame to create the illusion of movement. Nowadays, with the improvement of 3D CGI animations, people tend to think that traditional stop motion is counting his glory days, but the reality is that the animations still have a lot to say in animation terms. Some examples are films made 4 years ago, like Coraline, that recapped that had a lot of success in the cinemas. I'm sorry. Okay, in the stop motion, depending of the style and the material used, we can find different types of stop motion animation. The first one is puppet animation, and as the name says, is stop motion animation based on the use of puppets. The next one is the puppetoon. It's a variation of puppet animation, but the difference is that the puppets don't have a skeleton or armature joints that helps on the movement of every character. In the technique, every character is being reproduced in every position that have to be rigged, and the movement is introduced in changing the character model at every frame. The result is practically the same. Finally, we have the clay animation that is basically the same as puppet animation, but the only thing that differs is the material that they have used for the characters. That is basically plasticine or clay. Well, what I can say is that if you analyze all the animation world, a lot of people tend to think that a lot of types of animation techniques are basically extinguished. The 3D CGI animation can be all perfect that people want, but every animation technique still have his own unique look and his own unique movement style, and obviously application. What I want to say, for example, the flipbook animation, people trying to say that it is simply domestic use technique and is totally distinguished. Well, if you see the Motorola's commercial that I passed, do you think that this commercial would look better with a 3D technique or another technique? For me, the response is not. Another example could be the corpse bride made by Tim Burton. That film could be reproduced in 3D, but the reality is the style in the corpse bride move wouldn't be the same. In conclusion, I found that every technique has his own place. The only one who decides if one can still be useful in the commercial and film industry and is the commercial and film industry, and the way they want that their products look. Every time someone could think that any of these animations methods could be extinguished, the commercial or industry film is going to reinvent that to start a new visual trend.